everybody. How are you doing? It's good to be with you tonight. Happy Friday. I hope you have great plans for the weekend. I'm Nate Eaton. This is Courtroom Insider. No court today. So, off day, John Pryor getting ready to start his defense. Of course, yesterday the prosecution rested. We heard from the final witness, Doug Hart. He had a lot of interesting text messages to analyze and review. And then we had the little issue of the date that was wrong in the indictment. But all in all, it worked out okay. The judge is going to allow an amendment to take place on the indictment and give the jurors a special instruction so that they will know that there may have been an error on that amended indictment. But all in all, the case moves forward. And we will be back in court on Monday morning at 8:30, I should say, for when the defense starts. And I know many of you want to know, how long is John Pryor going to take? I have no idea. Who's he going to call? What's he going to do? What's he going to say? What is the defense? We don't know. We got to wait and see. And that's what I guess makes it so exciting. It's been quite a run for the prosecutors, who put up 67 witnesses, and several of those witnesses, I believe 6 of them, testified 2 times. So all in all, 67, 68, 71, 73 total testimonies over the course of 6 weeks. Or was it 7 weeks? 6 weeks. 1 week including jury selection. And then a new week will begin yet again on Monday. So because there was no court today, I don't really have much to talk about. But I have a lot that I want to share with you, because earlier today, I went and met with a juror in Lori Vallow's case. Her name is Laura, and I remember her specifically because she reminded me when she came in. I thought, here's a young woman, maybe a mom, probably a mom, and the reason I thought that is because on the day that the autopsy photos were shown, she was very emotional, and I noticed it. And I wanted to interview her when the case was over to get her thoughts. She actually showed up at Lori Vallow's sentencing last July in Fremont County, and I asked if she'd be interested in talking, and she was not. But now she is. And we talked on one of the first days of the trial here, and she said she was thinking about it, and she came up to me a couple days ago, and she said, I might be ready to do that interview. And so I put the call out for all of you to send me questions. No, don't send me any more questions. You keep bombarding my emails. I'm not going to do anything with them now because the interview's over. But you sent some incredible questions. I got over 600 emails. And I don't have a lot of time to go through all my emails, especially during the trial. But I went through them. I went through them all. And I put the questions together. And I think this is one of the few interviews in my life that I can say every question I asked came from you, because they were questions I wanted to know. So we met up today. I asked her the questions. She has a really insightful answers to the fact that she knew nothing about this case at all. Nothing. When she was trying to arrange childcare to prepare for the case, she'd tell her neighbors, her friends, I'm going to be gone for 5 weeks. And they're like, oh, are you doing the Lori Vallow trial? She didn't know. So that's how she was the perfect juror, you could say. But now she knows everything about it. And now she's coming to Chad Daybell's case trial, and she has a lot to say. So here we go. Here's the interview. Hope you like it. Leave your thoughts in the comments as we play it, and then we'll come back and I'll close it up when it's done. All right, so we're here with juror number 4 from Lori Vallow's trial, Laura, and beautiful home here in Ada County. What are your thoughts so far on the Chad Daybell trial versus a year ago when we had a verdict on Lori and you were home and it was all over?
Well, yesterday was really upset. Yesterday was a really hard day. Lots of tears.
When they came out and said that there's a mistake in the indictment?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was almost at first like, how could you even take this in? And then how does that even happen? And
Right.
that was the first time where I actually felt mad at the prosecution for letting that happen. And I was mad on behalf of Kay and Larry for the most part, you know. And we got up and walked out, and we were all, you were there, it's like kind of like our heads were spinning, and we thought that Larry had left, but he had just gone downstairs and outside, but he was the first one out. He was gone. Mm-hmm. And I went out there, and he gave me like a big hug and was like, it's going to be all right. It's in the Lord's hands. This is going to be okay. And I was like, why are you always comforting me?
Yeah, right.
He's just so genuine. And yeah, so, but compared to last year, my head was like so foggy at the end of it. And I couldn't do simple tasks or like make simple plans or want to be around anybody at all. There was I don't know how many weeks after the trial ended, but Tom Evans, that you've interviewed before, he invited us over, and so my kids and I went over to his house, and I felt so much anxiety being around people and being around people I didn't know. And I don't know what the psychology is behind that, but I'm sure it's just trauma related.
Yeah.
So.
And he's one of the few people, one of the 17 other people that can relate to exactly, well, not exactly, but almost exactly what you're going through.
Yeah. He tried to, he'll get mad at me for saying this, but he tried to tell me that it wasn't bothering him. It was.
And I think he's told me that a year later now when we talk. He goes, at first I thought I was fine.
Yeah.
But I realized I wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Okay, so I got over 600 questions from people all over the world for you. We're not going to go through 600, but here are the main one. Well, I'll go through the main ones. I've got 3 pages. The first one, just to get it out of the way, what is the juror bathroom situation like?
Oh my gosh.
During the breaks? Single stall? Do you have to wait? How does that all work? Because a lot of people want to know, why are the breaks so long?
Yeah, because there was 18 of us.
Right. Explain the process, if you can, behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course. So when we would leave out of the courtroom, there was a juror room right across, which I noticed the jurors this year aren't using that room, so I don't know where they have them. We are joking that they probably rolled out the red carpet for them.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe so. Not that you've been back there, you've just been able to see.
Yeah, we can see when they open the door because we knew where we were going.
Right.
And so, so that juror room is where I think originally they had planned to keep us all. They'd never had a jury that size before, right? This is the biggest case Ada County has ever had. And so to have, when they're used to probably having maybe 1 or 2 alternates in a room, they had 6 alternates. And we were like sardines in there. It was very close. And there was one bathroom that was like, just like a bathroom in your home,
One bathroom for all of you?
For all of us.
Oh my.
And so I didn't realize this, none of us realized this at the time, but eventually they would let us come out of the room and go down the hall where there was a bathroom that had multiple stalls, like a women and men normal bathroom. But what they were doing was transporting Lori back and forth through that back hallway, and we couldn't see her, because they don't want us to see her like that, right? They want us to see her as just a citizen.
So what would you do the entire time during lunch and breaks when you're all sitting in there? Because you can't talk about the case, right?
Not at all.
Not at all till the very end.
Nope.
And these are all strangers, at least in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. They're not strangers now. I mean, there's some of the jurors that are going to be in my life forever. I just love and adore them, and no one can know what we went through except for them. So, so like breaks and lunch, I mean, sometimes our breaks would be long, right? Because there would be other things like, it's fun being on the other side to see
what's happening.
Yeah. But we started out playing card games, and my brain couldn't even handle playing card games after being in there and listening and processing it in my mind, that sometimes I would just, try to get away from everybody almost. And even though you couldn't, after a little while, after we started complaining about how close proximity we were to each other and trying to eat lunch, they would clear all the hallways, and we would get to go to the jury assembly room for lunch, and they would block all of that off.
Which was across the hall.
Yeah, and it's a huge, nice room.
Right.
And so, I would just kind of be doing stuff on my phone and just trying to rest my mind from everything.
Could you call your family? Could you call friends?
During the day.
During the breaks,
yeah. Yeah, we could check our phones and text. The only time that the phones ended up getting taken away is once we started deliberations. Then they were taken away.
Right. So let's go back to before you were picked. You were telling me that you had recently moved to Idaho within a couple of years, so you didn't know anything about the case.
Not a thing. Not a thing.
Did you want to be on the jury? Did you care? Did you?
It's kind of a funny story. So, no, I did not want to be on the jury. You know, I have my husband's job makes it so he's out of town for, multiple days at a time. And so I'm just here with the boys by myself. And my dad had also moved here. He had lived in the same small town for 73 years of his life, and then he moved here to be where we were. But I was worried, about him helping and picking the boys up from school. And, I don't want to stress him out too much either, he's like all new. And so, but he was a huge help. Like, he's always there and willing to do whatever, and he did great at it. I shouldn't have been worried about it. But when I first went in for jury duty, I was really upset, because it said that I was going to be on jury duty for a week. And I was like, what am I going to do for a whole week? If my husband's gone during that time, how is that all going to work? Because I didn't know a lot of people here. I hadn't become close with people yet, enough to put my children in their hands.
Right. And you're thinking 1 week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Originally, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so I went in, and that first day, I was the first group to go in and sit in the courtroom, and Judge Boyce said a bunch of things. I couldn't really hear anything. I don't know if the mic wasn't working or what, but I could hardly hear him. All I heard was murder, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, what? I still didn't understand. And he said we would be shown downstairs to a room and fill out a questionnaire. And I looked at the name. I had no idea. I had never heard of the name. And asked all these questions. I didn't know, it had like lists of people. Do you know any of these people? No, I don't know anyone here. I didn't know where Madison County or Fremont County, or I didn't know where.
You're the perfect juror.
Honestly, like looking back on it, I really was.
Yeah.
And I had been to Yellowstone, so I'd been through
You knew
Rex.
that, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know that was the county it was in.
Right.
We'd been to Bear World the summer before, but I didn't know that was in Rexburg. Like because you just really don't think about it when you're just
traveling
going. Yeah.
As a tourist, yeah.
Yeah. So
then you get picked.
So then I get picked. Yeah. Well, I go through even before that when they go and do, questioning the jurors, and they had asked if we had any hardships that would make this really hard. And I had written on there my situation, that I could possibly have my dad help, but it would be really difficult. And so I didn't raise my hand when they asked that again, because so many people had made comments of like I would lose pay and really actual hardships. And I was like, okay, I gotta suck this up and just kind of keep going. Well, when Jim Archibald came to ask, and he asked me about the comments I had made, and I reiterated what I had said to him, and he asked something along the lines of, do you want to be on this jury? And I kind of looked at him, and I looked at Judge Boyce, and I was like, I was almost nervous to say it, but I was like, no, I don't want to be. And Judge Boyce is like, well, I appreciate your comments, but just because you don't want to be on the jury doesn't mean that we'll give you a pass.
Right.
Not exact words, but along those lines. So I left there, and I just knew I was going to be picked.
You did?
Yeah, I just had it in my gut that I was going to be picked.
So then you walk in the first day, and you hear the indictment, you hear the charges.
Yeah.
And you see Lori Vallow for the first time.
Oh, that's another funny thing. So when we, they were questioning us, I didn't know she was the defendant. I thought she was part of the defense team.
When she was in there with her team?
Yes.
Oh, you thought she was an attorney?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean...
Because she was dressed up. She wasn't in her jail outfit. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I didn't... And I'm sure Judge Boyce said that,
Right.
but you're just you're in a room that you've never been in with people I'd never served on jury duty. I didn't know.
In court terminology, if you're not familiar with it, you don't know what they're saying. I mean, it's going fast. You don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and I just felt like everybody knew each other because he was naming, talking to the attorneys.
Right.
He knew all their names, and I was really confused. So the first day going in there and he read the indictment, well, I'll back up a little bit. So when he was when the prosecution was asking us questions, they mentioned something about minor children and would this be difficult? And I was like, I had a 10 and 7-year-old at home. Mm-hmm. And I raised my hand. I felt like I needed to be honest about that. And I said, yeah, I didn't realize I didn't know it was going to be a 7-year-old. Even when she said minor children, I thought 18. I don't know. I just didn't think it was going to be a little boy.
Yeah.
And so it took a long time to let that all sink in. Even the first day, the only thing I remember Lindsay Blake saying was, and she never told us where her children were. And I thought, as a mom, I know where my kids are all the time. All the time. I know exactly where they are. And, I couldn't even fathom that, not knowing where your kids are and not, helping people look for it.
Right.
So.
Was there a moment, this is probably the number one question.
Okay.
A moment in your mind where you said she's guilty?
There was not a moment, because it was all circumstantial and because it was so convoluted that it took a long time for me to even really get, they kept repeating the dates, and as a spectator looking at it, I'm like, you've said that 50 times, but then I think about when I was there, I needed that reminder of those dates, and, that was a week after Charles was killed, that was a week after Tammy died, or that was, the day of. You actually need that because it's, like drinking out of a fire hose. It's so much. And
did you take notes?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah. I didn't use them when I went. No. Because for me, that's part of my memory process is writing. I mean, even when I was in college, that was part of my helping me remember things was writing it down.
And for the people at home, they may not know, you can't keep those notes.
Nope.
And you can't take them home at the end of the day.
Nope.
They stay at the courthouse. When the court's over, they're gone.
They're gone.
Do you wish you could have
No.
kept them? You don't want them?
No. I mean, what would I do with them?
Right.
I don't need that level of detail, and I would make comments in there about what was being said or how a witness was being treated because I had no other way to vent about things that I didn't like going on. And so I don't want anyone to read that. I want it to just be gone. You say things or you feel a certain way, and stepping back and looking at it and doing more research on the defense team. They're good guys doing a job that needs to be done, and I have no anger for them. I'm not, mad, or she deserved to have a defense, and she deserved to have the jury that she did.
Did you want a defense, though? Were you waiting, when they finally...
Yes, I was like, feels so empty. And when she said, or when the defense said we don't think the prosecution has proved their case, I was mad.
Really?
Because your kids were buried in your husband's backyard and you have no defense, you're disgusting, evil. I won't say who it was, but somebody on the law enforcement side said that my looks gave it all away about how I felt about her.
Speaking of your looks, I don't know if I'll ever forget, because you're my wife's age, and I assumed, and I could tell, or I thought you had kids, because there was the day that they showed the autopsy photos. I was closely watching the jurors, and you were front row center, and I noticed that you had tears and that you were looking up instead of at the monitor in front of you.
Yeah.
Would you say that was the hardest day?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I've dealt with the trauma and I'm okay, but when I really think back about how I really felt, it was really sad, there's nothing good that came out of that other than the fact that I know some amazing people now, and I have so much love and admiration for Kay and Larry and what they went through. But my little guy was 7, the same age as when they, those monsters, to an autistic 7-year-old. What kind of evil do you have to be to do that? And to then put him in your backyard, in a shallow grave. And I know when they showed his diaper, I was so angry. That's what he's like. I was just really angry, and I couldn't keep taking it in. And so that was my way of dealing with it, is just not staring at it. But I'll never forget it.
What do you do when you get home and see your kids that day? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember very well. I hugged them, and I was angry. And my oldest had a baseball game that night, and I just sat there the whole time and cried watching it. And my dad was sitting next to me, and he just put his hand on my leg, and he said, "Rough day, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." Because you can't say anything else, And I think that's probably the toughest, is going home, and home is normal. I mean, my husband didn't follow it because we didn't want to accidentally say something to each other or have that temptation of talking to each other about it. So he just never followed it at all. And I don't know if that was the right way to go about it, because he couldn't have the compassion for what I'd gone through. He just wanted to make it normal for me when I got home.
Right.
And I couldn't switch my brain off at all.
Right.
Even driving from the courthouse, the road that I take to come home from the courthouse, I couldn't drive down that road for a while.
After the trial?
After the trial.
Because you'd have flashbacks?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, I wasn't sleeping, I was having nightmares. And it's weird because that wasn't happening during the trial, it was after it was over. So it was almost like I had a job to do, but when that job was done, that's when all the stuff kept coming up. And I knew I needed counseling, but the courts provided us with 6 sessions. They do not provide us with any sort of contacts at all. And being new to the area, I didn't know where to go.
So they just say, we'll pay for 6 sessions, find your own counselor, try to get in, and then they reimburse, or?
Yep, exactly.
That was another big question. How have you dealt with the trauma? And you mentioned therapy, and that helped?
Yep. I did EMDR, which I can't fully...
Is that the eye movement?
Yep. Yeah, I can't explain it, and I know it doesn't work for everyone, but it was so amazing. I couldn't believe... it took the 6 sessions for sure, and I had my final session after the sentencing, and I felt really good after that. But yeah, my counselor was amazing. I don't know how I would have dealt with it had I not done that. I mean, it would have kept lingering, and I probably, you don't know how your mind is going to work after that, and like what's going to come out of that. But I think it was so good for me to do that.
Was there one piece of evidence that was like the most compelling, like the autopsy photos, that like really you're like, okay, this is it?
Well, them being buried in his backyard.
That was.
How can you get past that? That's what I think about through this whole trial, is it was his backyard. And I think why there, I think I even asked you this question yesterday, is like, why did he put them in his backyard? Because in eastern Idaho, for those that don't know, there's nothing. It is a lot of nothing. And they could have been anywhere. And as horrible as it sounds, I'm glad they were there so that we could find them.
Yeah, you're right. They could have driven 5 minutes in any direction.
And nobody would have ever found them.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. Did you feel the need to spoil your kids when the trial was over?
I don't think so.
No?
Just loving them.
Love them, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That is an interesting question.
Yeah.
I didn't tell my kids, my 10-year-old, obviously my 7-year-old wouldn't have understood. He understood that I was gone and on jury, and, my 10-year-old wanted to know what it was about, and I told him we wouldn't be talking about it because it was not good.
Right.
And so, yeah, he would just come, when I would come home, he would come to the door and hug me, and that was really all I needed.
Yeah. Did you ever just stare at Lori to try to get inside her head? Maybe not out of anger. I'm sure there were many moments out of anger.
There was mostly anger,
yes.
But
was there ever just to watch her reaction? Was there ever a time?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that also added to the anger, right? I mean, for the people who weren't there, she would flirt with her attorneys and snuggle up and be laughing. And that would make me angry because I'm sitting there away from my family doing this, and you think it's a joke? It was so disgusting. And I could see her doing that too in Arizona. She lives in some other dimension. I mean,
the other question about her that people asked is, did you feel, a lot of people say they can feel it, and I don't want to say energy because energy's been brought up, but like, did you feel an evil presence, or did you feel just not right with her? And then with Chad, as you've been coming to Chad's trial a few days, do you feel anything with them?
Not for Lori, not in the beginning. I didn't feel that way because I didn't know. I didn't know, and she looks normal, It's just like, it's, the whole old thing of monsters and evil people don't have to look like monsters. Mm-hmm. They can be very normal and attractive people. And so I guess maybe I was a little naive going into it, not thinking that anyone could do that sort of horrible crime to their own children. I just can't get over that. And then with Chad, he's a soulless man. That's what I see when I walk in there.
Do you feel like one was leading the other now that you sat through all of Lori's, you've been to Chad's?
Yeah, I think it was both of them.
Both of them equal?
I would say a little more Chad, because I don't think she would have done that to her kids if it was her on her own. Mm-hmm. But they were feeding off of each other, for sure. They're the perfect word of co-conspirators, and then them bringing Alex into it was their way of saying, I didn't do it. That's my thought. I mean, we'll never know.
If you could talk to Lori, one, would you want to?
No.
You wouldn't?
No.
Do you have anything you want to ask her? You just...
No.
Same with Chad?
Yep.
When it came time to deliberate, I think you all went back, was it a Thursday afternoon? And then we remember being in the courtroom and dinner was brought in. So we thought, oh, they're going to stick it out through the night. They must be close. And then like an hour later, you dismissed. And then came back Friday and we had it around lunchtime, I think that afternoon. Was there, and you could say as much as you want about deliberations or not as much. I understand a lot of people, don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what would you want to say about that process? Because that was also asked a lot.
Yeah, I won't talk about deliberations very much because I think that everyone should have the chance to tell their own story.
Yeah.
What I will say is that I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to do this with. A bunch of strangers, different views, different backgrounds, different places in their life, and we all came together without any outside influence, and we made a decision that was right and correct. And my biggest fear going into it was that I was going to find her not guilty, and I felt like the world wanted her guilty, even though I didn't know. Because why would it be a big deal if people didn't think she was guilty?
Yeah.
So I would tell the people that I was close to that I wasn't going to say whether I was an alternate or not, because I didn't want them to be upset with me if I didn't come to the right conclusion. But the process was very respectful, and it was what any defendant should want going into that. If I was on the other side and I was trying to defend myself against something that I didn't do, I would want a jury like we had.
Yeah, that's high marks.
Yeah.
You're right. That's what people would want. So you left the courthouse after the verdict. Do you remember what you did?
Yeah, a group of us went to a restaurant and had some
A group of jurors?
Mm-hmm.
With spouses or just
Yeah.
the jurors? Yeah.
Well, Tom and his wife were there.
Right.
And then some other jurors.
And did you talk about the case?
Everything. We talked and talked and talked and talked, and then I had to come home because my dad was home with the boys.
Yeah.
So, but our waitress had served John Thomas and Jim Archibald earlier at lunch that day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And she made the connection.
Yeah, she heard us talking. Yeah.
That's funny because the night before opening statements, I walked into Chipotle and John and Jim were there, and so it was.
You're like, I'm not going to talk to you.
Right. When you're all staying like downtown, you run into those people.
Yeah, Boise's not big.
Right. So you ended up deciding to go to Lori's sentencing, and just a couple of you. I mean, it was like 3 or 4 of you, I think.
There was 4 of us.
4. Why?
I needed the closure. I had talked to, so we all had a barbecue. Not everyone came, but we all had a barbecue after it was over. And I was talking to one of the other jurors, who is a really good friend now. And I was like, I really want to go to the sentencing. And she's like, I do too. Because at first I thought, is that weird to want to go to the sentencing? And so we talked with Randy, the jury commissioner, and asked him what that would look like if we wanted to go. And Judge Boyce is so amazing. He wants to take care of us. And he's like, if anytime you want to be in my court, you guys can be there.
Wow.
So,
and you've been able to come this trial.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think that you would have voted for the death penalty if Lori had been found guilty and it was on the table?
At the time, yes, I would have, without a doubt. I've had to think about the death penalty more since then. And I think our system is broken. I mean, I think you even said the other night, and I followed the Thomas Creech failed attempt at the death penalty. And I think that's cruel, the way it went down, you know. I think if you're going to do it, it needs to be humane, and it needs to be not 40 years later or 10 years later. It needs to happen, you know. If a juror convicts, and that's the problem with Thomas Creech, is he wasn't given the death penalty by a jury, it was by a judge. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to do it, it needs to be a jury of 12 who all agree that based on Idaho law, that he deserves the death penalty, and that it doesn't, you let the appeals process play out because you never want to, put somebody on death row that doesn't deserve to be there. But I wouldn't vote for the death penalty. I mean, you would have to if you were in that situation and, you're given specific instructions. But I don't think we should have the death penalty until our system works better.
So fix the system before
First.
you elect to put people to death.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I guess that kind of answers my question for Chad.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't do it until the system's fixed.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Has there been a day that you have not thought about the trial since it happened?
Not many. When I went to the sentencing, I got a little 5x7 card from Kay and Larry. It has Tylee and JJ on the front of it, and a little note from them on the back that they were handing out to other people too. And I have that picture where I get ready in the morning, and I don't know how you stop thinking about it. I feel love for them that is weird because it's like I will never get to meet them, and I never knew them, but I feel love for them, and I want them to be honored in not the way they died, but the way they lived.
Was there one witness that really stuck out to you?
Sulema.
Was that game changer? You believed her?
I think that a witness can be believed even though they're not telling the whole story.
Even though there's some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that her journal that they put up on screen, and the way it was very authentic, right? You could tell that it was real. Like, she was jotting things down and circling and arrows.
She took a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was real, and it explained to me in the clearest way possible with something so insane of why they did. It was the binding, it was the burning, it was, the dark and light scale. It was all of that was a big one for me. And I thought she did really good this time. No matter what you think, you can dislike her as a person. But I think she helped in this case.
She seemed to me more at ease this time around.
Yep.
Much more confident
Yep.
in speaking, and I think she was on much longer this time.
Yep.
Was there any witness that you didn't believe or that you had? And you don't have to say if you don't want to.
I have mixed feelings, but Audrey Bertario.
That was asked about a lot.
Yeah.
What was it about that?
I believed that she was innocent and that she didn't understand what was going on, and she wanted to be somebody. I think she probably has low self-esteem and was looking to be somebody, and they filled that for her. But I had a really hard time with the way she came about it, and I think that Jim Archibald had a point. All this time you've never said this, and now you're going to say it in front of this jury. Was she looking for her moment?
For those unfamiliar, she claimed at the very end of the recross that Lori Vallow threatened to kill her, and she was quite descriptive in the way that Lori had threatened to kill her. It didn't come up during the main testimony. It didn't come up during cross. It didn't come up during the grand jury proceedings. And so this suddenly came out of nowhere. And Jim Archibald stood up and really kind of was like, you expect us to believe this stuff?
Yeah.
I wondered if there were doubts in your mind too that this kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think he had every right to talk to her like that,
Yeah.
It might have happened, but you didn't have any right to bring it up at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's honesty.
I appreciate the honesty. I mean, everybody's got an opinion. And after the trial was over, did you read any of Chad's books or Visions of Glory?
No.
And you probably don't care to.
No.
Did you watch any of the media coverage from the case?
Yes. lots and lots and lots.
You wanted to do a deep dive, like,
I had so many unanswered questions, and it was the only way that I could fill that void of figuring things out in my mind and making sense of everything that I couldn't get enough. And there was a group that I would text with and find things, and did you know? I mean, it started on the van ride from the courthouse back to our cars.
that quick. You pulled up your phone.
Yeah. One of the alternates had already been looking because we had a verdict, so they were released from duty. And so she was filling us in on what she had found so far. I mean, the biggest question, which I think it was really good that they brought out more about why Alex died, because it felt so secretive during our trial. And it was such a big question that, although I don't believe that it was natural causes, I think that if they had just said, he had an autopsy and it was natural causes, that it wouldn't have been such a big deal to us,
Do you think it really was natural causes?
No, I don't. No.
Do you have a theory?
Well, she talked about him going to Mexico.
Right.
I don't know enough about different drugs to know, could they cause these things to look naturally? I don't know enough to say that. So it's maybe just a gut feeling.
There were also times I wondered, in your case and this case, are the jurors following all the names? Because not only do you have their given names, you have their alternate names, and new names are thrown out like Phoebe and Lily and Amy. And
Well, even the detective or Agent Hart who testified yesterday was getting confused on who Hiplos was.
Right.
And I forgot for a little while too.
Yeah.
They had me confused. So yeah, I don't think so. I don't know how you could, and it doesn't matter in the end.
Right. I was going to say, at the end, though, ultimately that didn't trip you all up.
No.
People are asking, and you don't have to go into this, but an overall view, not necessarily on yours, although that would be the only case about how deliberations work when you get back in the room. Is it like you all just shout out your opinion? There's a leader that, and again, you don't have to go into the detail if you want, but just like the procedural.
They don't tell us. They don't give us any instruction.
Really?
We have the instructions on, for each charge, these lists of things have to all be met for this to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And it was deliberate to make sure that we all said yes on every single thing. So that's as far as I'll say.
You mentioned you thought Judge Boyce did well.
He's amazing. I have so much respect for him, because there's probably times that he has such a poker face, but there's probably times, like yesterday, that he didn't want this to be happening, but he was fair. He listened to both sides, and during the trial, I could tell when he was going to rule, like what way he was going to rule objectively looking at it. And I think he was fair, because I could predict it based on past, and he was principled about how he was ruling, not in favor of one or the other. So yeah, I don't know what public opinion is about him, but I think he is an outstanding judge.
How about your views of the prosecutors?
I thought they did a lot better laying out the case this time than they did the first time and getting the story out. They were very receptive to our comments after the trial and, what we saw and laying things out, and I could tell that they took those into consideration. I think their heart's in it in the right place. I think it's a huge case for an area that doesn't have these types of cases. The whole state doesn't deal with this. And so, yeah, I think they did a good job.
And your view of the defense, you kind of mentioned that earlier, that had they been able to do their job, it may have been different.
Yeah. All they could do really is attack the witness in their profession, and I didn't like that. I thought it was really low level stuff. And but now, knowing what I know why they were doing that. They didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
So what were they going to do?
Here's an interesting one. Has your exposure to the case triggered positive changes in your life?
Appreciating the people who are there for you when things are hard. And my jury friends, we've gone through some hard times in the last year, and I think that those bonds are amazing, and it's sort of what life is all about, is having people that you can relate to like that. I've never had that before, and so you have friends, and they're good friends, but to go through something like that and to be a friend afterwards and to go through other things together, I would say that's probably the biggest thing for me.
The legal system, if you could change things, you mentioned it'd probably be wise if the court gave you a list of counselors that are available.
Yeah.
That might be one suggestion you'd have.
Yep.
Anything else? I mean, should jurors be paid more? Should there be more accommodations for jurors?
They treated us so well. I don't think jurors should be paid more, because I don't want people doing it for the money.
And it was what, $40 a day? Or?
After a while, it went up to 40 or 50. I can't remember. I mean, we got a good check. I mean,
Right.
It wasn't like anything you could do anything with.
Right.
But
It was something.
yeah, it was something. It's taxed, so it's like, the
Here's your
government's
30. But I mean, you don't go on jury duty obviously for money.
Yeah, and you should never.
Right.
But I think you should serve on a jury. I think maybe that's another thing that's changed, is my view of being on a jury, and telling people when they have jury duty to not look at it as a negative, because we all want to live in a safe society with rules and laws, and people get consequences when they murder their children or they do something else, that they need consequences, and they also deserve to have a trial by jury. And if we don't change our attitude about that, then you can't complain when justice isn't served.
How did you feel about Lori crying during the trial and when she asked to be dismissed and not see the autopsy photos?
We didn't know that.
That's right. You were all out of the courtroom.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't know that till after it was all done.
And what did you think when you heard it?
Mad. I mean, disgusting.
Do you think Lori Vallow cares about anything?
Other than herself? No.
What do you think has changed watching Chad's versus Lori's? Like, are you noticing differences? You mentioned the prosecution's laying out the case better. Mm-hmm. There's obviously a defense, much more of a defense.
Yeah, which I think is good. We want him to have a defense, even if I don't like John Pryor and the way he goes about things. He's doing it by himself, and he's actually doing a defense. So, I mean, say what you want about him, he at least is doing his job. And it's a complicated feeling, right? Because on one hand, you're so angry that he's defending Chad, but on the other hand, you're like, that's what you're supposed to do, and we want that, and we need that. The other thing, other than the not knowing about Alex, but also their explanation of the gun and how it misfired and comparing it to a paintball gun. So they weren't allowed to show a paintball gun last year, and I was so confused. I didn't know what a paintball gun looked like. I was like, how could it actually look like a rifle? It does. And so I think that played a bigger part, and I do think it was more important this time around to show that they did try once and it failed. And they went about it a different way with Tammy. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What was it like in Hawaii when you approached her? Because I didn't see that till afterwards, and I didn't put it all together in the timing and everything till you recently aired it.
Well, I didn't know if I'd get to talk to her. Like,
Yeah.
we were just waiting there to see what was going to happen. I didn't know if they were going to arrest her or whatever. And so in my mind, obviously, I was going to ask, where are the kids? And then one of the officers came over and said, you know what I'd really like to know? Why they're over here in Hawaii on the beach and her kids are missing.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I mean, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And then they said, we're not going to arrest her. And so I just kind of went with it. And I knew that I had to keep asking the questions because you never know if maybe one will trigger an answer.
Yeah.
And the faith one did. Now that I know that, I should have asked more about God. Tell me about your mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just like adrenaline.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting is after it aired, the people that knew Chad called me and said, that is not the Chad we know. Chad used to always wear khaki pants and collared shirts.
Like he wears in court.
Right.
Yeah.
They'd never seen him in shorts. He had lost weight. He was tan. He had more hair. They're like, we don't know that guy. And then people that knew Lori, who had defended her up to that point, were calling me saying, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to add? Any final message you have for people watching?
Yeah. My friend Tom Evans is writing a book.
Right. Yeah. That was another question. What do you think about Tom writing the book?
Tom is a really good man, and he's doing it again from the right place, and he's donating a majority of the proceeds to the Hope House, which is a great, I've read about it. It seems like a great organization. I've heard Tom and Susan talking about it. They seem, his reasons for doing it is to make something positive out of something so negative. And so I know it's on pre-sale right now at tomevansauthor.com. And I would never do it. I could never. I mean, it was a lot just to do this. I'm putting myself out there doing this, but I think it's after listening to you and you going through the questions of what people had, that I had those answers. So I felt obligated to share them and to fill people in, and because nothing's a secret. It's other than deliberations, nothing else to me is really a secret.
Right.
So
Tom's book is ready. He's not releasing it until there's a verdict in Chad's case.
Correct.
And then once that verdict comes down, you can get it. So as you mentioned, he's got a website, and he's been coming to Chad's trial nearly every day. I mean, he's there, and people know him. He's become kind of a fixture there. And you're right, very open to talking with everyone, very kind.
He's such a good man.
Right.
And his wife is amazing too. Really good family. So, yeah, I mean, supporting him to me is also important. And he's put a lot of hard work in this. And, I support him in doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? To think you were nervous. You did great.
I text Tom before. I'm like, he's on his way.
You did great. Thank you so much, Laura, for chatting. And I know that more of you will have more questions for her, but please don't email me any more questions because we've touched on it. Maybe we'll do a follow-up interview after the
And
fact.
if you see me at the trial and have questions, people have come up and asked me questions, and people have come up and there was one lady from Louisiana I just loved. I don't know if you talked to her.
I think so.
But she was so sweet. She was sitting out in front of the courthouse yesterday when we were on the 2-hour break, and she was sitting down and she's like, come here. And she goes, I just really need to hug you. And she goes, it's going to be all right. It's in God's hands, and it's going to be okay. And I'm really sorry for all the things you've been through. And I mean, just a warm person, and it's so filling, and that's why I like coming, is for that part of it.
Right.
Just a huge thank you to Laura for sitting down with me and being so open about it. I just can't imagine, being called to be a juror for that extended amount of time and not being able to talk to anybody about it and not being able to go home and just pour out your heart. I get to leave court every day and come and talk to you, and that's why I kind of like this, doing this program every night, but she couldn't. And our hats off to her and all the other jurors in that case, and in this case, in Chad Daybell's case, who it's longer for this one, and it's death penalty. If he is found guilty, they will determine whether he gets life or death. So they'll make two decisions here if he's found guilty. And maybe one day in a couple of weeks, several weeks, I'll be able to sit down and talk to them. I would hope that some of them might want to talk. All right, well, thank you so much for watching tonight. Here's where you can find me all the time. Who would want that? But I don't know. They tell me to promote this. So there's my Facebook. There's my Instagram, my X, and our YouTube, East Idaho News. You can also find Meetin' the Eatons. We have a little family channel, and that's where I'm headed now for the weekend to be with my family. We have great plans. We have soccer games. We have, what else do we have? Seems like we have some other stuff to do. And then back at it out here in Boise on Sunday for that. Also on Monday, don't miss not opening statements, the defense. Don't miss the defense taking over the case. 8:30 a.m. We'll be streaming it live all week long. And then we're back at live Courtroom Insiders Monday night. Well, yeah, Sunday night, actually. Sunday night, I'm going to do a recap, go through kind of what the prosecutor said, what we can expect from the defense. So Sunday night, I'll be back at 6:30, and then Monday, back at Courtroom Insider in Boise. Okay, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much for spending your Friday here, and we'll see you on Sunday night. Goodbye.